They just take the last best offer. Hell, you can do that yourself. Do this. If you're looking for a lawyer, Google Morgan & Morgan results and see what comes up. It may shock you. Then Google the firm you're thinking of hiring and do the same. That may shock you as well. We became the largest injury firm in the world for a reason. We won a lot. $30 billion and counting. Morgan & Morgan. For the people.com. Who would I hire? I'd hire us.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Past results afford no guarantee of future results. Every case is different and must be judged on its own merits.
Still leading. 97.1 FM Talk. St. Louis Conservative.
Last night, the DOJ sent a team of federal agents to arrest me in the middle of the night for something that I've been doing for the last 30 years, and that is covering the news. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects that work for me and for countless of other journalists who do what I do. I stand with all of them, and I will not be silenced. I look forward to my day in court.
Well, we look forward to it, too, like a lot, Don Lemon. There in front of the press, reading from his statement. I assumed that his lawyers wrote for him. You know, Don Lemon, known for his very fair and balanced coverage and his journalism. Now he's saying that this idea of him being persecuted for being a journalist, that he'll win in court. Now, I want to talk to somebody who I've seen and watched cover the news for quite some time and now is doing so on her primetime show on News Nation at 9 p.m. here Central. Katie Pavlich tonight. Katie Pavlich with us back on the Annie Frey Show. Katie, welcome back. It's always good to have you with us.
Hi, Annie. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Happy Monday.
So you know what it takes to go in, what Don Lemon has done in his professional career as a show host or whatever. I don't really know that I would call him a journalist. He's more of an opinion guy. What's your perspective as somebody who's been in the industry for a really long time? Don Lemon's choice to precede his crashing of that church with an explanation of what he's going to do. He goes in there, they tell him to leave, and he basically says no. And then he gets arrested, and now he's a martyr. What's your position there, Katie Pavlich, on Don Lemon's endeavors?
Well, first of all, I think he's loving all the attention. I think he's loving that he's now martyr Don, so to speak. But look, just because you're a journalist or you have a camera in your hand doesn't mean that you are immune from federal law. And the video and the indictment are pretty clear about what he was there to do. He's crying victim now, but the video shows him covering for these agitators who are planning this operation into this church. And then inside, the indictment says that he was blocking parishioners from leaving the premises who were terrified. One woman was even injured and broke her arm on her way out, and they were blocking adults from going to get their children from the daycare inside of the church. And so he can, claim this is all about the First Amendment, but also Americans have the First Amendment right to worship in peace and without danger. And they decided that they were going to make the move to storm a church in the middle of a service, which is illegal. Churches and synagogues are protected spaces. And I guarantee you that if the shoe were on the other foot and there was some conservative YouTuber who stormed a mosque or some other place of religious practice, that they would not be saying he was protected by the First Amendment. So, this reminds me a lot of actually, the situation in Gaza where they were saying that a bunch of journalists were being murdered. And it's like, well, if you have a camera, but you're a member of a terrorist organization, it doesn't protect you as a journalist. I mean, it's a very similar situation here.
Yeah, I got to start taking a camera with me everywhere so I'm safe. Katie Pavlich speaking with us right now. You know, what frustrates me about this situation is everybody is, of course, in the Twitter space or whatever it might be, they're talking about Don Lemon's freedom of his First Amendment freedom of the press and everything. Why are the Christians who are gathering in a sacred place of worship, why are the Christians always the last people who also still have that First Amendment right? Why are they always the last ones to be considered?
Exactly. I mean, I think they did this obviously on purpose because they have no respect for the Christian faith, and they thought that there would be no punishment for going into a church like this. They think they've been, some people like Don Lemon have never been held accountable for anything. There's always been a double standard of what they're allowed to do in terms of violating people's rights. And then when they do it, they think it's totally legitimate. It's disgusting. It's horrific. Let's not forget there was that horrific mass shooting in a Minnesota church recently as well. So the people inside of this sanctuary thought that was what was unfolding again. You cannot go into a church service and block people from worshiping, which is exactly what they did. And your claims of journalism and the First Amendment do not trump people's also First Amendment right to practice their religion freely, especially inside of a space that is protected by federal law. And it's very interesting to watch these people who are whining about the FACE Act, which was used under the Biden administration to throw elderly people in prison for years for sitting outside of abortion clinics and praying quietly because they believe that was a violation of the FACE Act and the First Amendment. And now all of a sudden they think that it shouldn't apply when it comes to a place of worship, which is exactly what the act talks about and is in the letter of the law. So this is accountability. I think that conservatives are used to kind of the left getting away with whatever they want, but there's a new sheriff of town, and her name is Harmeet Dillon, and she's backed up by Pam Bondi, and they're going to be held accountable for the same laws that they violate that they've held other people accountable for. And I think it's a long past time that happened. And just because John Lemon wants to call himself a journalist, I mean, you could argue whatever he is, but that doesn't give you the right to impede other people's First Amendment rights. And if he wants his day in court, he's going to get one.
Yeah, just calling yourself a journalist doesn't permit you to do whatever you want. There's a journalistic integrity that you would have to maintain.
Exactly.
There are rules, and you'd have to participate in them. One thing that you said about Don Lemon that I really kind of want to drill in a little bit on, because especially having been in the media for quite some time, you get to meet a lot of people, and sometimes people, the way they are out in front is different than the way they are behind the scenes or whatever. But the Don Lemons of the world, when I watch them, you said like he's never been held accountable. We all know people in our own lives that, they don't have a microphone and a camera and, I don't know, tens of people who watch you on MSNBC or CNN, whatever it might be. But there are people who are they just are so entitled because no one's either ever had the guts, or maybe they've just participated in the grift. They don't tell these people no. There's really an accountability that exists right now in fair reporting, and there are more options for people. Of course, if you're a conservative, we're Fox News Radio affiliate station here in St. Louis. But Katie Pavlich, you've got a primetime show on News Nation. You're bringing an important voice and an alternative for people to watch. That's kind of like capitalism right there, the free market giving people choice. It makes everybody better. And Don Lemon is kind of out in the cold on YouTube right now. Well, maybe in jail for a moment. I mean, like all this stuff kind of shakes out. He's finally getting held accountable.
Yeah, and it's just this idea that Don Lemon is pretending that he's not some sort of activist. I mean, we've known for years that he's more of an activist than he is a journalist. Yes. I'm not saying that you can't be both. I think that citizen journalism, actually, if you're honest about where you're coming from, you're actually being more transparent with an audience about how you're approaching certain situations, and it's actually easier to understand why people would take a certain approach or a certain position on an issue. But this idea that he's like this objective journalist, the same job he's been doing for 30 years after storming a church and participating in the pre-meeting where he says to the camera, I thought, maybe I thought he was smarter than this, shame on me, but he says to the camera, we're going to come over here because we don't want to pick up the sensitive nature of the planning. So he knew that there was something going on here. And then once he got inside, he was blocking people from leaving. It's one thing to stand there and be an observer. You could still argue what he did was completely illegal and he trespassed because a church, again, is a federally protected property from disturbances like this. But he actively, according to the indictment, blocked people from leaving the premises while he demanded to know their position on President Trump's deportation agenda. It's outrageous. And I'm glad that he's being held accountable, not because he's a journalist and his rights are being violated, but because he totally ran right over the civil rights of Christians who are worshiping in their own church.
Yes. And those First Amendment rights that's all part of the same First Amendment. They have rights too.
Exactly.
And those are the people who don't have the platform and the bully pulpit that Don Lemon continues to give himself. I want to shift gears
I think
here.
he's embarrassing himself, but
Yeah.
he can keep doing it. Whatever.
Yeah, we can cover it. It gives us something to talk about.
Exactly.
Katie Pavlich speaking with us right now. Before we let you go, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, of course, your new show on News Nation. People here in the Midwest can tune in at 9 p.m. on News Nation, but you've already had a sit-down conversation with President Trump. Just from, when you're there, when you're in the room with him and you're asking him those questions, people can go check out that whole interview. But what did you glean from sitting down there and having that conversation with President Trump, his command of the moment, of the situation, his ability to answer your questions? What'd you think?
Yeah, he seems very. I interviewed him during the first term for townhall.com and had the opportunity last week or 2 weeks ago to interview him again. And we talked a lot about the differences between his first term and his second term, just in the sense of what he's capable of getting done. And we just passed the 1 year mark of his inauguration. We interviewed him on the 1 year anniversary of that. And it seems like there's more control. It seems like everybody is on the same page. You're not seeing the same palace intrigue with the leaking and the backstabbing. The entire cabinet is on the same page as the president. It seems like they're always working and rowing in the same direction. And he seems much more comfortable with his agenda because he has people around him supporting it in a way that he couldn't really, operate in the first time around because there's so much distrust. And of course, there was all of the situation with the FBI, James Comey entrapping his top aides, and the impeachments and all of the distractions of the first term that were not his fault. They were, witch hunts by the deep state and by the people who then continued that when he was out of office for 4 years. So he seemed confident. Not that he's not ever confident, but confident that they're really getting things done in a way that is as a team, and that he's not, rolling the boulder uphill all the time as he was during the first term.
Yeah, I know that our friends on the far left they fall off their chair when I say this, but there's a little bit more of a stoicism to his confidence this time around. A little bit more of a pointing to the scoreboard. He goes back to his normal roots every once in a while, but I very much so appreciate it. Before we let you go, Katie, I know that sometimes these things are being put together and they're very happening in real time, but what do you have coming up on the show tonight at 9 o'clock on News Nation?
So we're going to talk a whole lot about the Epstein files and how the left thought this would be a silver bullet against President Trump, and all of a sudden all of their friends like Bill Gates are in them in really disgusting. Horrific ways. Absolutely disgusting. We're going to talk a little bit about the problem in Florida with all of the iguanas falling out of the trees. So we'll cover that and a couple other things that are still in the works, but 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 p.m. your time, and it should be a good show. Mondays are always fun. Well, we will be sure to tune in. Katie Pavlich, thank you for the time this afternoon. We look forward to having you back again soon. We love talking with you. Thank you, Annie. Thanks for having me. You're welcome. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye. KatiePavlich.com. You can go to X at Katie Pavlich. News Nation, weeknights at 9 p.m. Excited to talk to her about that. She was a news editor for Town Hall for 16 years. And when I went to Washington, D.C. last April, I was speaking with the Town Hall White House correspondent that they had there at that time. It was somebody who was filling in for the normal person who would go there. And, I'm just going to say that when you get to meet people who know these types of people, and it's